Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 641, recorded today live on Wednesday, the 28th of October, just before Halloween, or however we're going to have some weird trick-or-treat experiences in our neighbourhood. I don't think you're allowed to, actually, in the UK. But anyway, I'm sure there'll be some children knocking on doors, asking for infected candies from various people. Who knows? Anyway, this is a podcast to do with music technology. We like to talk about all things to do with music production, instruments, electronic music, the recording, the performance, streaming, anything to do with that whole kind of world, artists, that whole lot. And I want to say thank you very much to our friends over at Isotope, who are offering the 10% discount as part of the support of the show. So if you want to head over to isotope.com/Sonic Talk, you can save 10% on Isotope products right there. That's a special page they made for us and everything. So yeah, I want to say hello to our friends over in the YouTube chat room. Nice to see you. I may have mentioned this before, but we have a Christmas party every year. I think we might be having a Christmas quiz this year. We're working on getting that sorted out. But you can actually, if you want to donate to our Christmas drinks fund, you're more than welcome to use super stickers in the YouTube chat or super comments. I don't know quite what it's called. It's most welcome. You don't have to. There's no compunction whatsoever. But you could buy us a pint for the end of Christmas. And I suppose the more you spend, the more likely you're going to see the rest of the guests completely hammered live on air. But maybe, I don't know if I should actually use that as a selling point. That seems a little bit crass. Anyway, I want to say hello to our guests. We have Mr. Dave Spiers from GeForceSoftware.com, who's there in his home studio with the OB8 behind him. And what's that? Is that the Arc Quadra on your other side and the CS something on the other side? Wow, quite the pedigree. How are you, Dave?
Yeah. I need to take the CS80 back to the main studio, but it's too heavy for me to lift because I'm upstairs here, and it's like, I'm thinking of getting a piano removers in because we did that for the Mellotron.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, that whole, because I've been thinking, I need someone to give me a hand moving. Like I bought this wood burning stove, and I thought, how am I going to get it out of the car? Because basically, two people are going to have to stand like this far apart, gasping into each other's faces, which is probably not the thing to do. And the only person in my house who could help would be my 16-year-old daughter or my partner, and neither of them probably could handle the weight of 2 bags of sand each. So yeah, I got you. It's one of those things. But Dave, lovely to have you. What's been going on? Did I get an email from GeForce Software earlier? Something to do with the website and account and stuff? Does that mean that things are happening?
Yes, we've moved. We have a whole new website, but because we never knew what anybody's password was previously, all accounts have to be reauthorized. I have to say I've been very slack on that front. That's been Chris's agony for the last 2 weeks because we moved server. I mean, the whole front and back end's completely redesigned. We were moving from an creaky old Drupal site to WordPress. So the migration was huge. And yes, that's been Chris's baby. In fact, the first site we moved to, everything was really zippy on the front end. But when you logged in, it was like, this is way too slow. So that then had to get changed. I think that came to fruition yesterday. So yes, mails have gone out saying you need to reauthorize your password. So sorry about that, folks, but unfortunately that's progress for you.
That's the way it goes, isn't it? Yeah, you've got to. Yeah, it's better than getting the email saying all your passwords have been compromised and you have to change your password. That's much worse.
Yeah. That would have been, yes.
Anyway, lovely to have you, Dave, as ever. Always a pleasure. And we also have Mr. Rich Hilton. Note the new URL down there, hiltoniusmusic.com. Rich, of course, mix engineer, live player, producer. Been doing lots of things over lockdown, projects on the go. But if you wanted to, I'll plug it for you, Rich. It feels somehow better. Rich is offering his services as a kind of tuition / production and engineering teaching. If you go over to Hiltonius Music, you can it says get quote, but that's not really kind of appropriate, but you can contact him there if you'd be interested in that. I just mentioned that. But Rich, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Very well.
Excellent.
Thankful.
I'm glad to hear it. Been doing much playing? Do you find that you're playing much music in your spare time just to sort of to get in the flow? And I find that's quite a nice place to be at the moment.
I play a bit here. I play a bunch of guitar. I play on these things over here a lot. I love playing the keyboard, and lately I've resumed my piano practicing, which desperately needs to happen because that's where the actual muscles become developed. And so, yeah, I have been playing. Thank you. Enjoy.
Well, you're welcome. Well, lovely to have you. I did trail in the notes that we might have Tori Letzler or Jamie Lidell, but Jamie's email in response to the topics going out was a bit ambiguous, so maybe he wasn't saying he was going to be. And Tori was supposed to be making it, Tori Letzler, but she's in LA and she was on a very late session last night because she's doing some film work and just couldn't make it in. So apologies if you were dying to see them. We'll have them again on soon, I'm sure. So I wonder where we should start. Should we start with maybe? Do we want to go straight in with the heavy stuff, or should we go somewhere else first? With that, how does everybody feel? I feel like kind of.
I like all the topics.
All the topics. Okay. Well,
I like them all.
The sad news, very sad news, is obviously Chris Huggett passed away. Chris Huggett, if you don't know, big force in sort of UK synth design and music technology. He passed away last week. He was instrumental behind so many instruments, starting back in Electronic Dream Plant, then Oxford Synthesizer Company, the OSC. Then I didn't know this, but he also was involved in the S1000 operating system, which if you're of a certain age, you probably are very, very intimate with the ins and outs of his work. And then lots and lots of stuff with Novation starting from the base station right up to the Summit. And he was unwell, and it's just a very sad, it's always sad when we lose people in this business. And lots of people probably don't know about him because he wasn't very much of a self-publicist. He was quite a shy and retiring guy and didn't really kind of make much of his infamy, of which he would have had the perfect right to. And I know it's a very sad moment. Dave, you were friends with Chris. I mean, I know this, and it must have been kind of particularly hard on you, and obviously his family and co-workers and whatnot. But amazing guy by all accounts. I never met him.
He was amazing. I mean, it's funny, over the last few days, I've probably written about 3 tributes, but I've ended up just kind of scrapping them. So what I say today is kind of a précis. I've made some notes, but it's off the top of my head. But I think really the first thing I need to do is pass on condolences to his family and work colleagues, Melanie, his wife, and daughters, Nick Bookman at Novation, Chris Calcutt, Danny Nugent, Jerome Munier, Jerome Noel. And yeah, we've all been in a kind of fog. I've spoken to most of them since. I don't know. It's really, I don't know. We throw around the word genius. I have some insight that I think qualifies Chris as a genius. But I thought what was interesting is when the news broke, I mean, we knew about it a while ago, but obviously it remained private for the sake of the family. And I thought one interesting comment was Simon Forsyth said that, Chris was like the British version of Dave Rossum. And I've really thought about that a lot because he was definitely the most prolific British synthesis designer. I mean, you've talked about the Wasp, and I mean, there was the Caterpillar. And the Wasp just inspired legions of British youngsters like me to get into synthesis. But, as is often the way with underfunded and under pressure UK companies, it eventually went belly up. And I think that's kind of what I found really fascinating about Chris as an individual, because you'd have thought that he would have been snapped up by a big company. But actually, when we talked about those days, he told me he went back to repairing washing machines to make a living. But while he did that, he kept kind of thinking about, obviously, what would become Oscar. And Oscar was a mind-blowing synth for the time. That drive, that filter, the subtractive, the additive stuff, the memories, a sequencer. I mean, it was my weapon when I worked with artists for years because, a lot of people didn't really know very much about it. And then obviously when we came to model in Posca, Chris gave us his blessing, and he actually gave us the final revision source code. And I know that source code saved John, the Imposca engineer, months of reverse engineering. And in fact, John wrote a really beautiful techie obituary, which we've put on our website, which I think encapsulates kind of how inventive Chris was and how he could kind of get the absolute most out of limited components. And the truth is, Oscar should have been a massive success, but it was a mono or duo synth released at the time when everyone wanted affordable polyphony, and Roland's Juno 6 was the same price, which kind of stole its thunder. And again, they went out of business. But I mean, there's a few little funny things. Oxford Synthesizer Company were the first Cubase distributor in the UK. And I think that kind of after the demise of like two companies that, were fairly, well, certainly EDP were massively influential. It's a real testament to his resilience that he stayed in the business that he loved, and actually, even though he was a guitarist at heart. And then, obviously, as you say, he went to work for Akai and did the operating system with another one of the UK's most prolific designers, David Cockerell, who was EMS. And Chris told some brilliant stories about that era. I mean, we all know that engineers are kind of quiet, reserved people. And Dave Cockerell used to try and get through every day by saying as few words as possible, and occasionally got away with none, which was brilliant, because when Chris told me this, we kind of paused and laughed. I have a feeling we said in unison, yeah, there's a few people we know who need to adopt that policy. So, I mean, really, you had the Wasp, the Oscar. I mean, the Akai S1000 changed the face of electronic music, certainly in Europe and the UK. And I believe that gave him the kind of financial ability to move from a flat into a house, where he's stayed ever since. And then, of course, we move on to Novation, which was, I believe originally it was him and Ian Janaway. And do you remember they did that little controller keyboard that worked the QY10, the little Yamaha QY10? And I did some work for them for a little software thing that never saw light of day. But then, of course, the Base Station 1 came out, and that was a runaway success. And again, I mean, huge. As an aside, I had access to serial number 1 through my business partner at the time, which actually I took to Underworld when they were doing the first album, Dub No Bass. And after they'd finished with it, they brought it back to a music show I was doing at Wembley. Actually, it was my first ever music show. And bizarrely, Dave Robinson from Future Music saw me having a coffee with them and asked, could you kind of get them to do an interview at a time when they weren't doing any interviews? And Rick allowed me to interview them for the help that I'd given them on the album. And again, that wouldn't have happened had it not have been for the Base Station. So it's kind of weird and funny how all these things connect.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, obviously we know that Novation went from strength to strength. And I always thought that with Novation, Chris had found a really good outlet for his kind of prolific output. And then if you fast forward, to more recent times, when I was asked to work on the Peak and Summit patches, I kind of saw the team around Chris, the people I mentioned earlier, Jerome and Chris and Danny and whatnot, and Nick. And it was really evident they revered him and kind of were really proud to be contributing to something that kind of came from him. And it was amazing, really, because I kind of thought of those early days and how he'd survived, and kind of come through with a load of resilience. So for me, and I don't want to make this about me, it was a massive career highlight for me when Chris McLeod and myself and Chris Huggett travelled to Superbooth for the Summit launch. And we got to witness firsthand the praise that people had for his life's work, because he really did shun the limelight. In fact, there was a brilliant moment where I introduced him to Chris and Bridget from the Battery Operated Orchestra, who kind of immediately went crazy. Oh my God, not the Chris Huggett, and started kind of bowing and asking if they could touch him. And then on the walk back to the hotel after that party, he kind of chuckled and said, I'm quite enjoying this, which is a kind of rare moment of allowing himself to bask in the limelight. And I got to introduce him to Michel Mokusa, which was funny because he became quite tongue-tied, and, he was kind of held Bob's work in kind of huge reverence. And afterwards I said to Michel, that was a little awkward. But she made this brilliant comment, which was something like, if he'd have been any less awkward or any different, I wouldn't have believed he was a really good engineer. Which, again, just kind of echoes. But it kind of echoes my belief, like great artists and musicians, really good engineers are kind of quiet souls that are driven. They're just driven by this need to create. And I'd been trying, obviously, I did the Bright Sparks thing where we spoke to Adrian Wagner's best friend who worked at EDP, who's a mutual friend that Chris and I used to go to lunch with occasionally. And I'd really wanted Chris to talk for an extension of it from the Oscar through to the Akai through to the Novation days. And initially, because he was quite shy, I mean, he wasn't reluctant, but I think he felt kind of awkward just talking about himself. But actually, when we left Superbooth on the taxi back to the airport, he said, I think he was really buoyed by the whole experience. And he just said, let's do it. And then he qualified it with, I just need to have a small operation first. Oh. And we didn't pry. And then we met for lunch a month or so later, and he showed us a huge scar and told us that actually initially he thought it was appendicitis, but it turns out it was cancer and he was due for more operations and chemo. But he was really optimistic and upbeat still. And it kind of lulled me into a false sense of security, because the truth is, if I'd have known the gravity of the situation, I'd have pinned him down immediately. But, you know, obviously we agreed to let him recover and then talk to him. And then lockdown happened, and that scuppered everything. And there's no doubt in my mind that the delay in treatment, you know, caused by the whole COVID nonsense contributed to his demise. And then when it was clear that things really weren't going to end well, I did something that us, what do we call it, repressed British people never do. I wrote to him and I told him exactly how I felt about his work and our friendship. And I didn't expect a reply, because obviously the family were battening down the hatches and coming to terms with the situation. But he did, and it was heartbreaking, but I'm really glad I got the chance to say goodbye. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I guess my conclusion is there's that phrase, isn't there, about meeting your heroes, because, you know, they could disappoint, but Chris was a hero of mine who became a friend. And I know, you know, people say your heroes might disappoint, but Chris never disappointed on any level. He was the best synth designer I think the UK has ever seen, certainly the most prolific. And he had so much more to offer, which is what's so tragic about this. And he was brilliant company. Whenever we met, I was like a sponge trying to soak up all these stories and just kind of garner a fraction of his knowledge. Although, interestingly, he was more... He wanted to talk about guitar effects pedals with a mutual friend of ours who had recorded at Adrian Wagner's studio. So, yeah, you know, we're devastated, and I can't really end this on an upbeat note. But I can tell you one thing. Chris loved a decent whiskey. So I know it's a weekday and it's early, but this is for the best engineer the UK ever saw, and a good mate, and I'm shaking like a leaf.
Well, cheers. Amen to that. Thank you, Dave. That's really kind of you to say that. I'm sure that wasn't all that easy. I know it's interesting, Rich, isn't it? I mean, you know, obviously these things are always sad, and it's kind of when you have somebody like this who's passing, you know, someone who has been that influential. I mean, you know, aside of the instruments, it's the affordability of them, that kind of gateway that paved the way for many of us to get into this world. It was kind of him, you know. He was certainly, from the UK point of view, and obviously there are equivalents in every nation, but for a lot of people, it would have been Chris.
Yeah, very influential and prolific, as Dave said. And I didn't know him. I know him through Dave telling me stories over the years, and most recently when I was in Bath last time. And I offer my condolences to his family, to his friends, and to his fans, because he was a really, really significant person. And I was very sad when I heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's always sad when this, and quite often for many of us, you know, we talk about these things that occasionally happen, and there's, you know, we don't have maybe kind of a personal connection so much. We might have met them a couple of times, but not now. Okay, I'm gonna change things up now, because we actually do have Mr. Jamie Lidell there, who is just getting in. I will see if he can get his tech to work. I can't hear you, Jamie. I don't know if you can hear us. So while you sort that out, you might need to change your inputs and re-bring the browser in. But hopefully we'll get to him. But yeah, I mean, not always a fabulous way to start any show. But I mean, a great tribute there, Dave. Thank you so much for that.
No, thank you for giving me the time.
That's all right. You're welcome. Okay, right. So let me see. I will just wait. Yeah, Jamie's reconnecting. Let
You
me
hear my audio now?
I can hear your audio. I just can't see you. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's always this hilarious nightmare of my camera is available but doesn't show up.
Right. Okay.
So hang on, I'll.
This is like. Let me see if I can assist you there. It's pre-show. It's like pre-show show during the show.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, man. I think I can make it work if I plug in straight into my input on the back of the computer. So just give me 5 seconds.
Okay. All right. We'll do that. Well, in the meantime, let's move on to some other subject matter. Let's go here because I think this would be maybe also an uplifting. Oh, there goes Jamie. I don't want to see any of those valve mics going onto the floor. We had that thing with, so I'm going to turn that down in case we hear some sort of pratfall in the background. I don't want that to happen. But let's do this. This is going to be good. So this is new album from John Carpenter. This is a track called Weeping Ghost, Lost Themes 3, Live After Death. And this, again, another great... This is really interesting about it. I saw John Carpenter perform live. He performs with his son Cody, who I think is the drummer. And this is very John Carpenter. This is new material. I don't know whether it's material that wasn't there in the past, but has been sort of finished and whatnot. Let me just paste this link into the chats. See, this was a story on Synthtopia. But basically, John Carpenter, new album out. It's coming out in February 2021. But it started a whole load of interesting conversations. I mean, for me, John Carpenter, Escape from New York, and there's a really good video, which there's a little bit of it here. If I play just a bit of this.
Who would think that here we are in 2019 talking about music that I did in 1981? But it held up. You don't think about it at the time; you just do it. They say success is the merge of opportunity and preparedness. I knew what I was doing. Opportunity came up, and I delivered.
That's a really great documentary that Alex Ball did, where he's also talking to Alan Howarth about his involvement, because he was the kind of the engineer / musician, producer, whatever, behind a lot of the soundtracks. Because John Carpenter did all the soundtracks, or many of the soundtracks to his films. That was his thing. And there's this packed full of great quotes. One of them was he treated it like a holiday, because he would go from all the production and directing and the stress of that and the managing the money. He'd go into the studio, turn the phone off, and just basically make music. And the simplicity of a lot of those scores, it was very bold, because as we know, they'd become more and more overblown and complicated, orchestral. But many of these we remember. So, I mean, while it may not be currently particularly current in terms of musicality, the stuff he's doing now, it's still very much John Carpenter. I'll come to you first, Rich. Because you've done some score work as well, have you crossed paths with the John Carpenter universe anywhere along the line?
I may have heard a piece of music here and there, but I'm not well familiar with his previous output. I enjoyed this track very much in the show prep, and look forward to hearing what the rest of the album sounds like.
Yeah, I think, like I say, it's coming out in February. But I suppose the interesting thing about this is there were so many interesting points. Alex was... he had to score they did the whole thing. It was very much improvised, and there's loads of great techie information in that documentary. But did you get to see John Carpenter play live? Because he was touring in the UK. I went to see him in Bristol a few years back, and it was great. It was cheesy, but it was great.
It's really iconic, isn't it? I love that kind of driving, pulsing bass. I don't know. I kind of loved Escape from New York when that came out, so I was kind of hooked from there. And then when you discover the story, it's like, oh, he did that, and he did that, and it's like, wow. I tried really hard, as you know, to get Alex on today, but it's half term and he's on kid duty, and I know he was really gutted, but he'd have been brilliant to talk about this, because obviously I loved that video that he did with Alan Howarth and stuff. Although there's one bit that completely freaks me out, because there's all these pictures of the Arp Quadra, and they've got a coffee cup resting on it, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, it did make me come out in hives. But yeah, amazing. I mean, amazing. It's kind of timeless. I think that's what I kind of love about it. But as soon as you hear some of his stuff, it just kind of transports me back. You can almost smell the era that you were in at the time. It's very strange. I do like that about certain
There's
music.
some pictures of the score that they had to do, Escape from New York, and then there's just a great picture of them in the studio together. I think this is part of the commemorative.
There's the coffee cup.
There's the coffee cup on the... Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just behind his arm.
Oh my goodness!
Whoa! On the most fragile bit of the quadra.
That doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do. I know it's quite interesting, but the thing I watched the Alex Ball documentary before the show, and there were so many things because he was. At the time, it was very much Hollywood scoring, and still is very much. There's a sort of way that things are done. So you'd have the orchestra. The deal would be that the score then had to be provided to the movie, the studio, so that they could then deal with the publishing and whatnot. And a couple of things came out of that. He gave Alan Howarth writing credits on that album, which was pretty good because that must have made Christmas pretty bearable for the last 35 years, I'd imagine, because it must still sell a great deal. But the other stuff with all these kind of little isms, the underscore that they would use, would literally be two notes and a little arpeggio, a little sort of tinkly sequence line. And so they used this, it was so incredibly minimal at a time when things were much more lavish, and they are very much now. But now the thing is we probably remember those themes equally as well as we would do to some of the big Zimmer scores or, some of the John Williams things that you just sort of know. But the result is the same, but the amount of the fact that it was so scaled back, it's almost like that simplicity kind of thing. It's a testament to that. I mean, Rich, I know you've worked with on movie soundtracks. Is there a temptation when you get to do a movie that you've got to use the budget to get the orchestra in, you've got to go large because that's what's expected to a degree? I mean, I know you perhaps it wasn't you specifically, it was commissioned, but is it? I wonder how hard a sell it is to go, actually what I want to do is do it all on a piano and a bongo, you know what I mean, rather than the entire full 9 yards.
All of the directors that I've worked with placed a greater concern on getting the right texture for their movie than how that was going to happen. But that said, at least two of them, which would be Landis and Coppola, both expressed a preference for orchestra straight away, and so it was never in doubt that there would be orchestra involved in something that they were doing. Whereas Friedkin on the movie Blue Chips was less specific and less clear about what he wanted to do, and we did do a bunch of mock-up orchestral stuff, some of which may appear in the movie, but mostly it's not orchestral sort of sounding anyway, that score. So you get a sense, and that's mostly hashed out between the director, the producers in some cases, and the composer, which I wasn't specifically the composer on these movies. Nile Rodgers was. So
sure.
I was privy to the conversations that involved this subject, but I wasn't a determinant person in that conversation.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. I wonder, because the thing is, I mean, imagine it as a director, it's such an, most directors, you have to live and breathe it so much. And the idea of downplaying the music, not going large, not having that thing might be, might feel just alien because you want to give it all that weight and gravitas. And I imagine there's probably insecurities. I'm sure directors have creative insecurities as well. It's almost like, if I write a song, could I really handle singing and doing it with just a hand clap behind me, or would I have the confidence in that melody, to work? So therefore, by having all this sort of larger orchestral movement and sonics behind it, it kind of makes the picture seem more important, just in case you had any insecurities about it. Jamie's having trouble connecting by the looks of things. I think we've got... Oh, that's annoying. What about not using an audio interface and just going direct, just go. What do they call it? Go native. Go native. Let's see if that will work. We'll try that. Maybe we'll be back. Well, Jamie will be here just in time to actually say thank you and goodbye. But there's a studio there. Look at that. Oh, look, he's got one of the SP2400s there as well. That's interesting. Cool. Yeah, interesting subject. I mean, I think John Carpenter's stuff is fascinating. Here we go. That might work. How's that working?
Nice one.
Oh yeah, there we go.
It's more fun here. I could be roving guy, You
could be roving guy, Jamie. We were just talking about the news that there's a new John Carpenter album out. And,
yeah.
In 2021.
Amazing. Me and Christian, when we were in the band Super Collider, we'd always like come out to the music of Escape from New York. It was an amazing theme song to sort of walk out to. Sort of, yeah, it has that beautiful combination of, it's almost like so cheesy that it's sort of eerie. I don't know. It's like it's in its own zone, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And but I also was saying that, you know, the thing about that is so many of what he did has now been adopted by sort of what would term proper film composers. You know, like there's a section where
Yeah.
all of the oscillators go, they're just being tuned into this one point, and it just creates this incredible. And that's now become a total.
Yeah.
You know, in horror films, that's you know, one of your main things. I think they emulate in orchestras, don't they, where they bring all the violins into a single point of tuning.
Funny, yeah. It's that funny thing with synths. You know, I've been noticing recently. I've been actually trying to work more with acoustic instruments. Like my neighbor is an amazing marimba player, and I've been really fascinated since I've done the pod with a couple of people that are really involved with working with like tones from the orchestra and manipulating those tones. It's just so interesting how it's so easy to get these very compelling tones from acoustic instruments that are quite hard to achieve purely synthetically. And I think that with the John Carpenter, it's so synthetic that it's almost, you know, it can lack a certain emotional quality. There's a certain emotion you can coax, but you have to use the right kind of process almost to achieve that. At least that's how it feels to me at this point in time looking back. And obviously it's easy to do that now, but then it was really groundbreaking, you know.
I suppose it was the sense of atmosphere and the melodies that really kind of worked with the John Carpenter stuff, wasn't it? I mean, that was the sort of, that was the big takeaway. You know, we remember most of those themes, and because there was so little to them in many ways, we remember all the parts. Whereas with a big orchestral score, you might only remember the top line, and you might not think of the underscore so much and those things. I suppose. Yeah.
True. Hey, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he was a hit maker. He's almost like a pop writer in that way, you know what I mean? Making hooks.
That's very true, yeah.
I mean, you know, Vangelis was so talented with that as well, with his themes. I mean, I suppose ultimately any composer, Morricone, any of the great sort of film composers, they do leave you with these incredible, you know, themes that are as catchy as any pop song, really. So, well, yeah.
Absolutely. I should actually just introduce Jamie Lidell. Jamie Lidell's there in Nashville in the studio. He's on his phone because we couldn't get his tech working. He came in late. Jamie, of course, fantastic singer, songwriter, producer. What have you been up to, Jamie? Quickly, you get to have your introduction. You do, and your podcast as well, which is a fabulous resource.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Podcast is in its third year now, which is really bizarre, actually. So yeah, I've been really enjoying putting that show together. Still, you know, keeping me busy. Yeah, I've been, like I said, I've been working with my neighbours, which has been fascinating because they're from a different world. You know, they're classical percussionists and on a very high level. Boston Symphony, and G.H. Ong is one of the world's best marimba players. And she lives literally across the street. So it's actually bizarre to try to think about interfacing those kinds of players with the modular, and just it's been expanding my mind, which I really like. I appreciate that because I really like making music, you know, of all sorts, but something that I've never done before, that's always the best thrill. And I've been racking my brain, like trying to interface an instrument like a marimba. It's quite tricky. I'm going to get hold of one of those rings, you know, those Genki ring things. I'm going to try to use that to sort of capture her playing, her gestures. And I'm going to try and add contact mics to the instrument. Anyway, I've been there. I've been making lots of sample packs, which are coming soon. And, you know, not much music. I could do doing a bit more music of mine, but I've been learning piano. That's been my main focus. I've been spending most time just sort of trying to learn at last. 20 years, you know, later, I'm like, oh, I can actually play one of my songs. But hey, you know.
That's funny. I was thinking of a story earlier, actually, just because I learnt to play piano. A friend of mine's mum was quite an eccentric lady, and she was a Mexican concert pianist. Their American family that lived just up the road from me, and I learnt piano from her. And she had a really interesting past. Not only was she like concert pianist standard, she taught me, Freddie the Frog and all the kind of stuff. Must have been incredibly frustrating for her. But she used to listen to Jean-Michel Jarre, and I remember she also introduced me to Oxygen. And at the time, so I was a really little kid, and I remember hearing that at her house when I used to go for for piano lessons. So it's a matter. I've got the rudiments, but that's about it for now.
Check this out, dude.
Oh wow, you got the vocoder.
Yeah, they lent me one, and it's a new one. It's very, it's very good. It's fantastic. I should plug it because I'm just going to shamelessly plug. Now I have a Patreon for the show. It's patreon.com/Howa, Howa, hanging out with audiophiles. I've been doing all these sample packs. There's a load of samples of the vocoder. I'm doing all the vowels on every key. And it's really cool. Super. I sung a few notes and just waited for the vocoder to process them all. And I was just a witness to the vocoder. And it was it was really a treat. Yeah, super cool box.
Nice. I don't think I've ever even seen one of those, let alone.
And this has been an endeavor of mine. This has been a really big endeavor of mine. This whole thing here is like a polysynth.
Right.
Yeah, I got a bit involved with with
telling me.
Yeah,
there's some cable fetish going on there, Jamie.
Look how neat that is. I mean, that's a 4-voice synth with velocity, using surge oscillators, and it's actually really beautiful. It's super nice. So I'm really proud of that, and it actually worked.
How long have you had that patch set up on it though? And when are you going to change it?
Yeah, I set this up. Yeah, I'm not touching this because it was a bit of a. There's cables going behind the case, so they they go over the top and then through the hole here, so they're out of the way. Yeah, you do have to become a bit, it taps into different parts of your brain, but that's why some people like it. And of course, I've got this thing, which you may have seen, you see that?
Yeah, that's the SP1200 kind of remake, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm. It's very good. It's very good. I've been on the beta team, just going working on that. I've just got this as well from UA, the Ox.
Oh yeah, that's the amp.
That could be interesting for processing sounds. Anyway, I'm very excited to be on the show. I'm just showing you all the bits.
Excellent.
I've done. That's all the bits.
That's the tour. So we've had the tour. Well, I suppose we could talk about a topic, really. I mean, just trying to think what's the next thing. Gosh, there's so many topics that we can. Should we do the instrument we've never heard of, or should we? I'm just trying to pick the topic because we've only got 20 minutes left. Okay, how about this one? So this is just really simple idea. So this is basically.
Hi, my name's Nate, and I created Effintone because I think plugging your guitar into your computer should be as easy as your old tube amp. So we made this dead simple USB interface that sounds great, and it has no extra boxes or adapters to keep track of. It makes jamming in your digital environment easier than ever before. Here, let me show you.
Right, we don't have to list all that, but basically it's a cable with a USB-C on one end and a jack on the other. It's the sort of thing that when you look on eBay, you buy them from obscure Japanese companies and they don't work, obviously, because they've soldered one thing onto the other one. But this actually has a little class compliant audio interface into it, plug a guitar in, and just think, what a great idea. And Effintone, I've just suddenly thought that's an interesting name for a topic. Rich, I'll come to you first, Rich, because... just the simplicity of this, what a great idea. I mean, I hope he does all right, because it's actually not. I think he's reached his goal. They're double, almost about 2/3, 1 3/4 time their goal. But more of this sort of stuff, making it so easy. You plug it in, I guess you plug it into an iPad or a laptop. I think it's USB-C, so it'd have to be the right kind of iPad. But
it's also mono only. But he'll build a stereo one with what he makes from this one, and it's cool. It's
$20.
easy,
$20, piece of cake.
Yeah,
just seems like I just flippantly flow this. I mean, this isn't really a major topic. It was really more of a kind of just simplifying the technology so that most people could just plug something in and have it work. Is a kind of a cool idea.
Right.
Dave, you haven't spoken for a while. I know you're not a guitarist, but be good to be able to just plug something straight in like that with a real cable.
Yeah, I mean, 20 quid. I like the name. Honestly, the company name for me is it. I'd buy one, yeah, because it needs to branch out into, everything like effing synths and effing guitars and effing effects and effing singers and all the rest of it. I could have a lot of fun with that. So yeah, support this guy so he does more stuff, I think. I like this. I mean, the simplicity of it's amazing. I use in fact, I'd like something for the phone because I use this, I think it's an Akai thing, a box. And I can never kind of make it work 100%. I never know whether it's stereo or mono. And of course, when you plugged it in and you've done your thing and then you listen back and you go, oh, it was mono, you kind of lost the vibe. So anything that makes life simple, I'm down with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think so. Jamie, you play guitar, don't you?
I have a couple of. It was my first instrument, really. I used to annoy my mum with it. And I never really got beyond sort of pentatonia, which I think is really the best thing about guitar anyway, screw the rest. But anyway, I tried the aux, with a bunch of drum machines and synths and stuff. I was really excited to sort of see what would happen with their ampy world going on other things. But it's quite tricky, really. I didn't like it. So that's interesting. I wonder if like plugging other things in with this cable would be tricky as well,
Well, I think you've got to get them out. If you're putting modular stuff into a guitar input, the level mismatch is going to be enormous. You need something to.
Oh yeah, no, I do all that right. Yeah, Nick, come on.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
You think I am an amateur? Of course I do that right. I got the impedance right. Look at this.
Man on his
see how many bloody have you seen how many of these I got? I've got 7 of those bastards. But yeah, no, I know. It's of course, there's levels, there's bloody, all of that shenanigans. But it just sounds weird. And then I thought to myself, is that always what happens when you plug stuff into real amps? Does it sound kind of thin in a way? But what I used to do, side note, sorry, I'm getting carried away now. But this is maybe useful to live performers, if live performance ever happens again. I used to insist that I had a bass amp. This is a weird thing, right? I used to insist with my rider, I had a bass amp on stage behind me when I was doing my shows. Just because I could sort of, regardless of if their monitoring worked or not, I could sort of run my stuff into the bass amp and sort of get started, even if it was a bit of an issue. And I do remember vocals into a bass amp was a really cool vibe. Small aside. And then maybe everyone thinks of guitar amps for that, but I thought the bass amp was much cooler. So maybe that's what I need to do. I need to work on bass amp models. And the cable's cool.
Yeah,
bring on the cable.
But bass amps have been. They used to. Rich, bass amps used to be used a lot for PAs, didn't they? I mean, I seem to remember there was. But I'm sure I've heard that happen before because it's just got a lot of oomph to it.
People love to plug things into bass amps. Guitarists quite often love to play through bass amps. So yeah.
Just not carry them, perhaps, so much. Yeah. Okay.
Just carry this little cable.
All right. Okay. How about this then? I was going to put this. Yeah. This feels like good news. This is Output got 45 million quid in funding. I mean, Output, relatively newcomers, I suppose, on the sounds and software side of things. Although they have been going quite a while. Arcade was the big release, which was the kind of almost like a groove and sample player that you get new sounds for. It's a subscription service, but obviously they've been going great guns during lockdown as people have been looking for inspiration. I mean, and that's quite encouraging. Maybe the fact that the rest of the world outside of our creative bubble, where we're all sort of saying, oh God, it's awful, everything's kind of going wrong and it's never going to be the same. Somebody's going, here you go, here's 45 million quid, go and do something with it. It's kind of that seems pretty good. I don't know how, or is it a bit risky? I know, Dave, you were shaking your head there. Do you think it's a bit scary, or does it seems like a good endorsement of investing in creative, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I just find that amount of money completely scary. If I was sitting on the board of that company or was involved in that company, you got to deliver. But amazing. I only heard about this last week, and my jaw hit the floor because I'd kind of anticipated after the Rolly situation that we weren't going to be seeing any kind of investment like that again. But there were a couple of really interesting things on the website. I thought the one that I think it might have been on the Create Digital Music site where he said, according to Output, more than 50% of sessions result in the writing of a new track. Now,
how do you know?
Well, and also there's that other conundrum, isn't there? Does actually starting a new track equate to finishing a new track? But I had this conversation with somebody in the industry not that long ago, quite high up in the food chain, as it were, and he said, we were talking about sound design, and I told him the amount of time I spent on patches and stuff, and he said, users don't want to do that anymore. 5 years ago, they'd spend 4 hours making a patch for a mini Moog, but now in 4 hours, they want to complete a track. And I think that's kind of interesting. And, if this is heading in that direction, it's going to be quite intriguing to see what comes out of it. I mean, certainly their roster of artists is lengthy and reasonably impressive.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of their library and their dedicated instruments, people really, there seems to be a curve that happens. Like, Spitfire really made it through in the film composers and media composers and just kind of interesting people who are doing interesting productions. It's like their stuff was the stuff to have. And Output have a similar kind of reputation, I suppose, for a lot of their stuff too. I don't know. That's interesting. Well, I mean, you're doing sample packs, like Jamie. I mean, obviously, there's something in that. So that if you're doing it, they must be on the right track, right?
Wow. You know what I always think of with Output? I have a friend, Justin Stanley, great producer. He's worked with Prince and all these amazing artists in there. He's got these two great kids, and his son Suede had made a track. And it was playing it in the car, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is crazy. Like, had all these beautiful progressions, and he was really in control of it, and he was telling his story over it. And then Justin said, yeah, it was all done with Arcade, the Output plugin. And I was like, well, that is pretty fun. I mean, the fact that it tapped into the imagination of a child, and they were able to, maybe they're his son was one of the 50% who made a track, because
it made it to the car.
It made it to the car, and it was great, and it was super cool. So I was like, this is like maybe like the new Casio. Do you know what I mean?
Ah, yeah, I see what you mean.
It's like that kind of, like, you used to get presets. On organ drum machines. I mean, ultimately, they were awesome. Didn't hurt Sly Stone's career to have the rhythm ace. I mean, I never thought, oh, come on, Sly, why couldn't you make your own beat? How come we have to use Foxtrot? Because it was just like, it was just incredible. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it just happened to be an amazing starting point and tone color to make compositions happen. Yeah, and it is an interesting world. I totally get that. Everyone wants everything fast. Good on them. Wow, that is a lot of money. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah. Well,
they must think they're going to get the money back,
Well, the thing is, I know, Rich, I don't know if you saw that they said, they haven't even got any mobile stuff yet, so obviously that's presumably somewhere it's going to go. But I don't know, it's an interesting thing that Jamie was saying, the fact that you can make people less likely to create, spend that much time on a single piece of music, want to just kind of do something and have it done. And I was talking to Rachel Claudio, I did a really good interview with her, and she said, she thinks maybe in the future, now she's got a kid anyway, she's going to kind of go, well, maybe I'm not going to create opuses, I'm just going to kind of do sketches and try and finish off these kind of vibes and just release shorter and less complicated pieces of music. I wonder if that's a thing.
Well, short stories have survived for, millennia, so maybe, why not? I like that too. I like the idea. I like everything Jamie said about it. I like everything Dave said about it. Yeah, good on them. Hope I haven't used the software, so I don't have a personal experience to relate about it. But I see them creating very popular and very innovative software ideas, and I think it's fantastic that they got this kind of backing. And hopefully, I look forward to seeing what comes.
Absolutely, yeah. Dave, did I come to you first? I can't remember now. My memory's
gone.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I did actually, just in the spirit of drinking to Chris Huggett, I took a slurp of King's Ginger, and I realised I didn't really have any lunch, and it's gone straight to my head, and I've already become forgetful. Literally, I had it in a sequential shot glass, so I feel like I'm really flying the synth flag. Yeah. I'm doing it properly. This is amazing news. I mean, hopefully it is, because, I mean, as we've seen, there's been a number of investments in companies which haven't quite worked out yet. I mean, Native Instruments have got some more investment, but Rowley took a lot of investment, and they didn't necessarily come up with, or as far as we've seen, the product that is really, really mainstream. I know, Rich, the Seaboard is something you really dig, but I mean, they didn't sell 100,000 of them, I don't guess. So it's sort of, I haven't hit.
God, I hope not, because they're all going to break someday, and they have no service department.
Well, that could be an issue. Yeah.
They have one service department. I should be fair. They have one service department.
Okay, fair enough. So, Jamie, you've got two possible show titles. Pentatonia, I thought, was quite good, and also Sly, why did you use Foxtrot? Is actually another great show title. That might just be a bit long. Might be a bit long. Okay, right. So we've done that one. Gosh, what's next? Let's see. Well, I suppose if we did talk a little bit about the. About Roley in that last subject, so maybe we should look at this new surface. This is called Erae.
Meet Erae Touch, a new kind of music controller.
So really, it looks like a really large Seaboard block to me. It's quite hypnotising. There's something about blinky lights that just get me every time. In fact, let's have a look. So they're running a Kickstarter as well. They are doubled. So blinky lights obviously working. So they've got double their pledge. They're going to be released. Nice. I think it's about 560 euros or 590 euros USB-C. But I mean, sure, isn't that basically Roley technology completely? I mean, that looks like total. I mean, I'm not sure how you could get away with that. Do you think that's an interesting? Did you ever go for the Roley thing, or have the idea of the blocks or the Seaboard and stuff?
Yeah, I need some of that MPE business. I mean, any advice as to what to get first? I'm all ears. This does look quite fun, doesn't it? It definitely gives you that idea of like, what would music look like in the future? We'll be hitting these hit the ripple tank, and then you stick. It reminds me of those 80s videos. Remember, they used to cover the snare and like talcum powder, and they'd give it go like bam, and it like all spray. They need to sort of get a bit of talc on there. They need to sort of talc it up, and then they'd have blinky lights and talc. They might get like 80 grand just for the talc.
That's true, but that could be an optional extra, maybe. Yeah.
It is interesting how there's so much of you have to really sell the dream, don't you? You really have to. It's all about sort of these Kickstarter things. You have to sort of. So I noticed that with sample packs as well. I was getting into a chat with my friend Lucky Paul. He'd done a sample pack. It was all about the sort of. He's working with someone. It was about nature sounds, different kind of sounds. He's saying that there's much work went into the promo and selling the dream of it as making the actual sounds. There's so much of that. Obviously, it's needless to say, but maybe in this day and age, we want the dream of it. But hey. You got to keep the dream alive. If this thing works, and it works as well, it looks really cool. But yeah, Roley must be like, hang on a minute. But then again, doesn't it look like a Tonori? It looks like a sort of a Tonori. Is that what the name of that thing was?
Yeah, I remember that. So it comes with it. It's got an editor and stuff. You need to do and you can do all of these things with it. But
it does look pretty futuristic, doesn't it?
It really does.
Have you seen like the woman who does the symbolic sound stuff? I always forget her name. Susan Cicciani.
Susan Ciani, no.
Yeah, I think I always get her name totally wrong. She does something with a kind of a Harken, thing using Kima and like it's really impressive. It's sort of like this before all this stuff, I guess, became mainstream just another 3 years ago. But yeah. It's all about how you use it, isn't it? Because if you're just going to use it as a big keyboard, it's a bit of a novelty, really. But it's sort of like, what else can you do with it? That's the kind of interesting thing.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is, I don't know, Rich. I mean, you've kind of gone for this new technology playing Surface. So Surface. So obviously, there's something about it that does appeal. Well, this is a little bit removed from the actual keyboard layout. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic, and it requires a lot of practice. Your piano technique doesn't even get you halfway there. So you actually have to work on learning to play it in order to be effective with it. And what Jamie just said is true. It's who you are and how you bring yourself to the musical task at hand through this thing. And I grew up playing brass instruments, most notably trombone, and when I'm playing melody on this thing, when I'm playing melody on this thing, it reminds me of being a trombone player. It's just as hard, and it's just as satisfying. But I quite often play this thing monophonically and really enjoy it, but it's unbelievably challenging. And for a long time, you sound like a beginning violin student. And eventually, it starts to sound like you and what you're after. And it does require, you can't just buy one of these things, bring it on stage, and expect to be any good with it.
Yeah, and I suppose it's going to be the same with this pad. I mean, I suppose the thing is, there's no different. You know, you don't get the haptic feedback or the textural feedback. It's very much light based. Dave, I think, did I lend you our C-board? Because we had a bigger C-board. Have you ever actually used it yet? Have you plugged it in?
Not the big one, but I've got the little blocks one that I use quite a lot.
That's really good, isn't it? That one.
I really, really like that. The big one's just In fact, I haven't got a long. Yeah. I haven't got a long enough lead to connect it to my machines. But yeah, this was funny because I was watching the video. I kind of grew up doing the whole alternative controller thing, so I've always been susceptible. And when I watched the video to this, I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. And then when he hit it with sticks, I was like, whoa. And then I thought, wow, yes, you can hit it with sticks. Yes. So, yeah, anything you can hit with sticks, I'm happy with. It just looks really interesting. But I'm very conflicted now because, like I say, I grew up on that whole alternate MIDI controller thing. And there is a part of me that wishes that probably I might have been better spending my time just learning how to play a bloody instrument properly, sitting down at a piano and practicing with the same amount of effort I did, kind of disappearing down this rabbit hole, and then you find something's obsolete and then it breaks and then you can't get it fixed or replaced, and then you go, yeah, I could have actually learned how to play a guitar, for example.
Well, what's interesting about this, I like, is as you hit it, I want to see kind of like almost, I would like to see ripples and movement on the pad. Yeah, I think it'd be a great visual. So you hit it and it just sort of goes, you hit it and there's this sort of light explosion and all of that stuff, which has nothing to do with how playable it is, but yeah. But
there was that little mad iPhone app or iPad app that it was like an aquarium, and you could prod it and the fish would come up to the surface and stuff and kind of try and nibble at your finger. My gran was mesmerised by that.
It's an easy solution. You just fill the whole thing with little straws, and then there's like a tank of talcum powder. So like when you hit the thing, like little puffs of talc come out of the holes. I don't want much for this Kickstarter. Yeah, just a little. I'm not asking a lot. Yeah, it's a talc, and it has a little strobe light on it as well. So it's all ready to go.
That's a great idea. So what we see is one of the Kickstarter goals, one of the funding goals should be the talc accessory kit. Yeah. Okay.
But talc is really bad for your health, isn't it? You can't breathe it in; it's all carcinogenic. But we don't need to worry about that. It looks
well.
Cool.
It could be some other form of dust. I don't know. There could be any form of dust.
Bring in Johnson & Johnson as partners.
But don't you ever got on a side note on that though? Like when I get cables from the modular, if they come in packets and they're like contains carcinogen, California recognizes this phenol propylene or whatever is carcinogenic, and I'm thinking, so the plastic in the cable is carcinogenic. So is the touch surface carcinogenic? Do you ever go down that rabbit hole of thinking, is the computer keyboard carcinogenic?
Everything is.
Am I just tripping?
It's a good thing we're not in California.
Or is that actually valid?
Everything ultimately, I think, is carcinogenic in the requisite quantities. In the requisite quantities.
If you smoke the keyboard or you smoke the cables,
we set fire to it. Yeah, it might well
in California.
In California,
and or just
exactly
triple the price. Leave the talc out and just team up with a kind of Colombian or Bolivian marching powder expert. Now that would appeal to the musos, wouldn't it?
Lordy. Should I say allegedly or something at this point?
Allegedly.
I don't know. I feel I probably should. I know it's interesting though. I mean, I think that there's. Sorry, Rich, you speak.
Your point about things you hit is very interesting because there haven't been that many electronic devices that you buy with the intention of hitting them with objects like sticks. And there's a company called Cat that used to make something called a mallet cat, which was sort of an electronic marimba that you could lay end to end and have multiple octaves on. And I once watched a guy on a gig have one fail and open it up, and I looked at it and said, well, no wonder it failed. Because they're built so it does not look like it's been built to be beat on for any length of time. It just, it would fall apart. Look at that, is kind of the thing. So if this thing is intended to be hit, that's a whole nother set of parameters with or without the ripples on the screen that you have to contend with in terms of its longevity and how well it does all the other things it continues to do.
Yeah, maybe it comes with a sticker that says, don't hit too often, otherwise it'll be carcinogenic or something like that, yeah.
No, they need to sort of do the promo video where they drop a sort of anvil on it and stuff. They need to sort of subject it to proper stress tests.
Drummer driving driving a kind of forklift truck, perhaps, yeah, something like that,
yeah. Go with the Roadrunner theme here with the anvil and... Acme earthquake bills. Stuff it full of Acme earthquake bills.
Remember the guy jumped out the spacecraft and kind of descended to Earth? I always thought that could only have been bettered if he'd have been followed by an anvil.
Was a balloon? It was a balloon, wasn't it? Was it a balloon?
Yeah.
No, he was talking about Felix. Felix Baumgartner, I think is his name.
Yeah, and it was a that's right, but it was a balloon, atmospheric balloon that went up to the outer atmosphere. That's right, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, and then he kind of jumped off and did that whole free fall thing, which was amazing. But I always thought at the time, it would have been brilliant if there was an anvil following him there.
Wow, awesome. Okay, well, it feels like, although it seems a bit churlish to end things, Jamie, I mean, I know you couldn't make it till the...
I'm so sorry about that. I think I sent you a response. Nick, I'll be honest, I was responding to someone else, and I just wrote the word lovely.
Yeah.
Which I think to you was like, nice topic, Nick, lovely. And then I left it like that, and you were like, "Oh, so Jamie's in." It's like, yeah, I've done that twice. I've responded to email. I've done that really bad thing of like responding to the wrong mail twice. So I don't know what's wrong with me. But there's lots of things wrong with me. But I'm sorry. I'm glad I could make it on roving camera.
I'm glad you could make it on.
Like sick.
I'm glad you could make it on as well. That's very much appreciated. So yeah, I suppose we should wrap things up a little bit, and I should, before we go, just remind you that you can save yourself a whole 10% of on products. If you go to isotope.com/Sonic Talk and you use the code, if I got the right, the Beast. Welcome, Sonic Talk listeners. There's a special landing page, and you can save 10% at checkout if you use the code Sonic10. Which I believe, there it is, Sonic10, and you will save money on a special page they made. So if you want to buy any of the isotope stuff, certainly Neovo. We've got a review of Neovo coming up. We're just waiting for the final finishing touches for that, so you'll be able to see that. But all of their stuff. So we want to say thanks very much for them for their support. Rich, thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget, if you want to find out about what Rich can offer you in terms of production mixing tips, Hiltonius Music, get in touch with him. And thank you for joining us, Rich.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Great to see everybody.
Good. Always good to have you. And also we have Mr. Dave Spiers, G4 Software. Thanks ever so much for talking about Chris. I'm sure that must have been very difficult, but and we managed to have some fun as well. So thanks for joining us, Chris.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That cheered me up. That got me out of my fog. Thank you, G.
Well, don't forget, go to G4 Software. If you've got an account with G4 Software and you want to access it, you need to reset your password. Is that right? So that you can, because they've changed providers and they can't obviously hang on to your password. So you need to reset your password. Is that about the size of it?
Do all of those. Yes, do all of those things. Yes, sorry, but it's completely necessary. We had no choice in this matter.
Okay, all right, and buy stuff, obviously. And Mr. Jamie Lidell, there with a rather fabulous. What is that exactly? Is that a mask or a puppet?
Sorry about that.
That's great. I like that.
Now that was like, when I played with Beck. I opened for Beck on a bunch of shows, and he was going out on tour with a bunch of puppeteers who did the Team America movie, and they were amazing. They had the entire band as puppets playing in sync with the real band, and they filmed the puppet band and projected it on the screen behind on all the Megatrons. So the audience just got to see the puppet version of the band in real time with the real band.
That's
So
great.
wait, so there was so there was an entire band of puppet operators at the same time
on stage as well. Yeah,
Jesus.
and the puppets were in the back. And because I joined at one point, they had like a banquet table, and Beck would be at the front playing an acoustic guitar, and the rest of the band were being served salad at a banquet table, and just hammering the table, which was all mic'd up to be his percussion. I was at that table, and because they didn't have a puppet me, they made a cardboard puppet. And they told me, if anyone wants any puppet tips, they said, to make a puppet version of yourself, you just need to replace the eyes with like little dots. So there you go. That's a little puppet tip.
Did that tour make any money whatsoever? I can't imagine it.
I can't imagine it did. Yeah. I mean, I opened up for Bjork once, and we were playing at the Hollywood Bowl. She had fireworks. Matt Moss, flamethrowers. I thought the same thing. I was just like, it is amazing, but geez. So, I mean, bring it on. Do you know what I mean? That's what it's all about.
As we're very
Give people
close
something to remember.
Absolutely, yeah. That's showbiz, folks. Well, Jamie, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody. It's nice to have you all with us in these times, and we will see you all at the next available show. That was Sonic Talk episode. What was it? 641. Good Lord! Wow, check that lighting out. See you later, folks. Thanks for watching. Bye bye now.
Ta-ra!